I use Spec Kit to rebuild my entire application with Claude Code. But did this new structured approach actually make a difference? You can think of Spec Kit like planning mode on steroids. It forces Claude through 3 distinct phases of planning before it writes any code. So let's get it set up and see if the output actually improves. So first things first, we have to get Spec Kit installed inside our project in Claude Code. And to do that, there's a UVX command. And I'll put some quick install notes in the description of the video. Basically what you're doing is you're saying specify init, and then you're giving it the name of the project you want to do. So in this case, I'm going to say Resume Rocket, and then you can just choose your AI assistant. So there's a few options here. We're going to take Claude Code. You can also use Gemini CLI Cursor or GitHub Copilot, and the steps will be relatively the same, but Claude Code is my go-to. And then for script types, since I'm on a Mac, I'm going to say SH. Now what it's going to do is take all those templates that are inside Spec Kit and copy them to my local project. It's also going to install the custom commands that you use inside Claude Code. So that's all you have to do to get Spec Kit going. The rest will be inside Claude Code. So now I've CD'd into that directory and open up Claude Code. And now we're going to see we have new commands. We're going to have the specify command. And that's the first step in the process. What we want to do with this is describe the what and the why, but not the how. So we don't want to get into any technical details about what the application stack should look like to technologies. So you can just put that prompt right here. But a better way to do it was just to reference a markdown file, which is what I did. And this way I can look back at this later, and this will always be my starting point that I can iterate off. If we look in that markdown file, I'm really focused on the user journey, the experiences, the outcomes we want, the problems we're trying to solve. So if we look at the overview, it just says build an application that helps job seekers create tailored resumes optimized for specific job descriptions using AI. How they'd use the application, like first-time resume creation, resume tailoring, iterative improvement, profile management. So I'm really going through basically the requirements and how it looks from the end user's perspective. But nothing in here is around technology. So now that command's done, we'll see under the specs folder, it's going to add a new one called Spec MD. So we look at what that is. It's basically taken that initial prompt we gave it and then mapped it to this template and put it in the format it knows. And what's really cool is it actually breaks it down into functional requirements and gives them a number for each one. So now that we have that comprehensive spec built for us, now we can go on to the plan phase. And Spec Kit's added a plan command here. So now we can actually start giving it some technical details about how to implement it. So let's get say I'm going to use the plan command, but I'm going to say use Next.js, use ShadCN for my UI, and use Neon for my database. So that took about half an hour, but the plan step is finally done. But keep in mind, this plan step is a token hog. Went through all my Opus token limit, and now decided to switch to Sonnet 4 halfway through. But just a few points on the advantages of doing it this way versus just more vibe coding. It's actually thought about the architecture. So it's created 5 libraries for Profile Manager, Resume Builder, AI Analyzer, and Export Service. It's also implementing test-driven design. So it's thought about all the tests it's got to build. And I thought this was really cool. It's actually using a contract first approach. So what that means is it actually defines the APIs first, like before it's done any coding. And then if we look at the artifacts it actually gave us from that planning phase, it's got a lot here. So I actually created, like I mentioned before, an open API specification for all my APIs. It's given me a data model and this nice entity relationship overview here. It shows me all the different tables and how they fit together. So it's really mapped out my database. It's got schema definitions. It's even thought through indexing strategies for performance. It's really comprehensive what it's done. Maybe a bit too comprehensive in my opinion, but I'll talk a bit about that later. So now you can start to see how these different commands layer on top of each other. So start with the specify, which gave us our requirements and user perspective. And then we went on to the planning, which actually got into the technology and did really detailed technical specifications. The next one is the tasks. So this is when we're starting to break down all our plans into individual tasks that the AI can use later. And the task command actually ran relatively fast, just a couple of minutes. And then you can see here, what it gives you is a markdown file for the tasks, which basically says first load the plan MD, so the one we created in the last step. That'll give the AI a lot of the details that needs to implement everything. And then it actually breaks down everything into different tasks. So the setup tasks, the database schema tasks. What I found really interesting is it wants to do test-driven development. So what it says is these tests must be written and must fail before any implementation starts. So it wants to write all the tests, have them fail, and then it'll start implementing the actual application, which is a very interesting concept. Let's just try to implement all this and just see if it actually works well. And there's no special command to implement, so now you can just say implement and then just select the task.md file. And that's going to reference all the other plan.md and all the other references it needs to. So that's a good place just to start with that. Well, there we go. It took over an hour. It filled up the context window multiple times. I had to compact it. It also stopped multiple times. I had to tell it to keep going. I mean, this thing just uses a ton of tokens, but it wrote a lot of code and it's saying it's fully functional now. It's got complete user authentication and authorization, resume tailoring with streaming responses and confidence scoring. So it was making a lot of big promises. We put in all the API keys and connection strings for Neon and Clerk and everything. And let's see if this actually works. Hey, my name is Ben. If you're into AI coding, make sure you subscribe to my newsletter, the AI Unleashed News. It'll keep you up to date on the latest in AI software development and also just tell you what I'm working on. It's the first link in the description and I hope to see you there. So here's the end result of that whole process. And first impressions are, it looks pretty good, pretty clean. It's really good that it just worked right away. That was pretty nice. Also, the Clerk integration just worked. It logged me with my Gmail account, greeted me by name. That's pretty cool. In terms of the UI, it seems like some of these work. Profile resumes, but you get to templates and it kind of bombs out. So it didn't actually complete the whole application, which was a bit disappointing for all that planning. And it did leave some key parts out. Like for example, I can create a new profile and it shows me all the information, but it doesn't give me all the metadata for the different work experience, education skills. It just gives me the professional summary. And even that I can't save. It just gives you a pop-up saying the save functionality not implemented yet, just a UI demo, which is actually the opposite of what it said when it completed the project. It said everything was complete, ready for production. So that part's a bit disappointing. This is really a first start of a project. It's not a complete project. It also chose Next.js 14, which I don't think was a good pick. I would have thought with all that planning, it wouldn't have picked an outdated version. And in terms of what I do like, I really like the consistent component architecture. So if we see here in our source folder, it's built all these components for us. It's broken the different services down in their own unique service component. So for example, we had the profile manager, which is separate from the export service. So I really like the component architecture. I also really like the API contract management and state management it's implemented. If we send your app API, it has different API endpoints for profiles, resumes, templates. It's even got a health API. So you can open that up. So it does a really good job of separating out the APIs and the contracts. We also have all like really good documentation for the APIs in the specs folder here that we can reference when we add in new components. So that part's all organized much better than it would be just vibe coding or something. And also because it was doing test-driven development, it has this test folder. And I like the way it split the tests up into contract tests, integration tests, testing the libraries individually, performance tests, and unit tests. They have a comprehensive test suite, at least started here. It's actually not complete as I would have expected based on all the jobs I was doing in that planning phase, but it does still have a good foundation for tests. My initial verdict on GitHub Spec Kit is it's a good framework, it's a good tool set, but I think it's trying to do too much for me. I think I'm going to experiment with just using Spec Kit more scope just for a new feature, for example, instead of a whole application. I think then it'd probably be more useful. I just didn't like how it went away for so long and did so much without any user interaction. I actually like coding with AI and I like the back and forth. I don't think it's quite good enough yet to go off for an hour on end and just plan things. That being said, if you look through the Spec Kit framework, it's got all kinds of great markdown files. You can just take parts of it that work for you and then just customize it to exactly how you want to work and take the good parts and just leave the parts that are too much on the side. That's the strategy I'm going to take. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you're having an amazing day. I'll talk to you in the next one.